What is the worst feeling ever? Yeah. That's the worst feeling I've had so far. When my husband was in a car crash and I had to wait for our friend to come take me to the hospital that was 45 minutes away. Then when I saw him I broke down. All I saw was blood all over his body. He's okay now but actually has a heart stint from it now and had to have spinal cement. He broke his back. He crashed so hard that he ruptured his aorta and was bleeding internally and his legs were paralyzed until they put cement in his L2 from the burst fracture. 10 years ago I dated a guy from another country when I worked there and we broke up shortly after I returned to my home country because he cheated on when we turned long distance. I was livid and I deleted everything about him and unfriended him and all his friends and family on Facebook. After all these years, for some reason elusive even to myself, I still miss him a lot. I want to know how he is doing but at the same time I'm very afraid I will find him dead because when we were together, he was living a dangerous life. Sometimes I'm glad his name is so common that his profile is drowned in my search result. I know I could have found him if I tried harder but I did not because I don't think I can face it if my fear comes true. I've been on the other side of that. We had a shooter at work a few years ago. And while ultimately it was just a murder-suicide, we didn't know that for several hours. We evacuated, 500 police cars from surrounding counties showed up, and it was a major thing. I sat in my car for 3 hours after the initial social media post from the local newspaper, fielding calls from friends, family, even old co-workers and acquaintances, all wanting to make sure that I was alright. The unfortunate thing is that I didn't consider calling my kid's school. Poor thing had a full-on breakdown. She was only 9-10 years old, because her friends and classmates, that she knew had parents who worked with me, were all hearing from their parents, but her. They wound up taking her to the office, where they called the emergency number, my wife, and she filled her in on what was going on. She still gives me a rough time about that. I came to make a similar comment. I got a call that my father had been found unconscious from an apparent heart attack and had been taken by ambulance to the hospital. I had to wait by the phone for an hour before I got the call to say he was dead. I've been through some painful, traumatic experiences before but that feeling of simultaneous dread and suspense and feeling stupid for hoping but hoping anyway but also starting to grieve, was the absolute worst. Broke my back during an accident a few years ago. Made a full recovery, but the night after they put chapstick-sized screws in my back to hold it all together remains the most painful and miserable experience of my entire life. Woke up from surgery thinking this isn't too bad, then entered the depths of hell a few hours later when the anesthesia faded. Fun fact. There's a limit to how many painkillers they can give you right after you've been under complete anesthesia. They increased the dosage the next day and I was alright, but that first night was something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. When you love someone, not only just care for them and appreciate their presence, but truly love them. You can't imagine a moment without them, a future that doesn't include them or a lifetime that isn't besides them. They are your muse, your motivation, and everything in between. Without them, you feel less. They make you the person you want to be. Well, when the feeling isn't reciprocated, that can suck majorly. Whenever this happens to me I always end up blaming myself for letting it go too far. I've tried to convince myself that there are signs that tell you you're just projecting on the other person what you want them to be or want them to feel towards you. But I guess those signs are just really hard to recognize once you've fallen too deep. It always ends up destroying you and those warnings become so evident afterward. Oh man, finally deciding to throw up at 11 p.m. after an all-day hangover with nothing in your stomach. I've done it quite a few times. It's so brutal in those first few moments. Eventually you do feel better than before though. Don't be like me. Make the choice to throw up early. Throw up like a man. Fun fact, when you are certainly going to puke, your saliva glands react heavily to coat the entire inside of your mouth with saliva to protect you from any stomach acid that may otherwise fuck you up. So, if your mouth starts filling up with saliva, you're going to puke. Don't fight it. Make puking way less of an awful experience when you can let it all out on the first gag instead of dry heaving for a solid 20 minutes lull. Happened to me at work. I was accused of stealing a coworker's wallet. Employer was so convinced it was me they installed cameras everywhere. Eventually came to learn the two that were accusing me were the ones thieving. End up smashing my thumb on the job. Employer denies my workers' compensation. Got a lawyer and still fighting 9 months later. 4 months I went without any income until my lawyer won my benefits. The fear and frustration were insane. I would never wish this on anyone. Especially if it's sudden, even if they're older. I lost my grandmother a few months ago to an accident. She always seemed so strong, like she'd live forever. It feels the same as when I lost my aunt, almost 13 years ago, to a brain aneurysm. She was only in her 40s. Losing both of them hurts in a different way than when someone passes after a long illness. I think this is especially difficult when it's a close parental figure, parent. Your life is instantly changed on a profound level, like from that point on, you are an entirely new person, especially when you watch the light go from their eyes when the doctors said it wouldn't be long, especially when you watch them take their last breath. Miss your dad. Dealing with postpartum anxiety. During a little family drive all was well until I looked at the dash. I had a panic attack over the gas gauge being close to E, despite us near a gas station and fine for money etc. All of that. Absolutely bonkers panic attack. It was completely unwarranted yet it happened. I'm currently working on it with CB therapy and it's been helpful. I'll never forget that day. I was already severely isolated living in terrible condition dictionaries and working insane hours to support her. I left my shift at 82 hours for the week between both jobs. Finally looked at the long text I was too busy to look at all day. I'm not sure if the sting was worse when having to pretend I was fine and hold myself together while waiting and in transit for the Uber ride home or when I walked through the door and it all just hit me. The following 3 days I was just overflowing with emotion, constant crying, couldn't eat and all I wanted to do was sleep. It still kind of hurts so long after. I've been through a lot of bad days in life but nothing hurt more than that. Definitely. My father had some bad mental health issues but he didn't get help, and it made him so abusive, and it ruined everything in his life. At the time he passed away, I hadn't spoken to him in years. I just said I was done and cut him off. He would be the last person to admit he needed help. He acted like everything was someone else's fault, but I bet deep down he saw, and knew, the wreck he turned his life into. And was ashamed. So he used blame, verbal abuse as a coping mechanism. To admit it's your fault and you did nothing about it, that'd be just awful. I sympathize, but not enough to excuse that shitty behavior. At this point, it's up to God to sort him out. One of the most heart-wrenching feelings I've ever felt was the realization that I've never been anyone's priority. I was, and often am still, an obligation to my family and friends. I know, especially in the past, I was difficult to deal with being emotionally needy. The reason for it was I sensed that nobody really wanted me around, so I acted desperate for people's attention. As an adult, I've corrected that. But it's painful that I can't man old friendships and it's hard to build new ones as an adult with all the responsibilities one has at this age. 100%. Shame is the killer. The whole how did I let this happen? I thought I was strong, why didn't I see the signs, why did I think it was 'cause he loved me, etc. Or when the abuser makes you feel like it was your fault. It took several years before it sunk in and I realized holy shit. What happened to me was actually a rape. It really isn't just one thing. Many think it's just, man violently overtakes the woman and does it. It's pressuring her, threatening, wearing her down emotionally until she says yes. But one yes after 100 no's is not consent. It's him doing it while you're unconscious, waking up in the middle of the night to realize it's happening. First finding out your crush is into someone else. It's such a weird loss of innocence each new time. I was really into a guy once. I always had a small inkling that he was into another girl, but I was in a lot of denial, just trying to cling to the hope that they weren't really a thing. I remember when I finally saw the dreaded post on Instagram of him making it official with the other girl, I had such a distinct, painful feeling. It was the air fully leaving my lungs and a long, sad sigh, like someone had deflated my body. I've only felt that specific deflation a couple of times since. In other instances of rejection, really, signs of non-reciprocation, by the more intense crushes, feels bad, man. I hate pining. I think the worst feeling is just feeling alone in a room full of people. You know, when you're at a party, you hang out with a group of friends at the beginning of it all. Then very slowly everyone parts with the group for various reasons until you're left all alone without anything to do and no one to turn to because everyone dear to you is doing their own things. You can't help but feel a bit sick with the sinking realization that you are alone. I don't know, but I consider this the worst feeling in the world. That dark and desperate moment when the alarm goes off on Monday morning and you know you have to get your sorry ass out of bed, but you lay there debating how much you really need a job and how feasible it is to go live in the woods, mentally planning out some sweet shelters, thinking of a few cool spots to get away with it. But then you remember you're a poor excuse of a human and you would likely be dead within hours, plus TV/warmth/ not having to hunt or forage. So then the next wave of dread rushes over as you realize a shitty-ass job is the only option. It's probably not the worst, to be honest, but it's got to be up there. Everything that is bad in life is infinitely worse in the morning. Dragging your ass out of bed, trying to eat even though you feel sick, washing and dressing for people who think you are human garbage either way, dealing with traffic which is just jumping into a stream of collective stress and anxiety, arriving at work to see your boss fat ass BMW and knowing you are about to walk into a 3-hour meeting where nothing gets done. Guillotine.jpg. It's Monday lunch. You eat your dry microwave meal in the communal lunch area. Your boss sits down next to you and starts asking about all of your projects. You want to say this is my break and not a meeting, but your other coworker only talks about grisly murders and true crime shit during lunch, so it's not much better, etc. 2 words. Broken tooth. Somehow, I managed to split a tooth in half. It went from slightly throbbing to absolute hell torture in a matter of a couple of weeks. I went to 3 dentists, and only the third one managed to see the damage. He just glanced at the x-ray and said, "Son, I can't even imagine what you went through. I shit you not." I will never forget the night before my appointment. I woke up every 10 minutes because I felt the immense fucking pain streaks gnawing off the tooth nerve. One Ren and Stimpy episode comes to mind, the one where Ren stops brushing his teeth and the fucking tooth beaver chews through the exposed nerve endings. Yeah, I cannot watch that cartoon anymore, fuck's sake. Also, on the day of my appointment, I walked to the dentist. It was a 5-minute walk. I have walked the walk, man, barely. When the pain hit, I couldn't walk straight, nearly fell down just from the sheer amount of the magma burn feeling, like 1,000 hot needles were inserted into my brain. Thank heavens the fucker was extracted shortly after that. Never felt better in my life before and after. I still have the tooth as a memory trinket in a drawer. Fuck waterboarding. Broken tooth is the end of it all. Knowing people conspired to hide stuff from you and treated you like a sucker. A childhood friend of mine cheated on her boyfriend with a friend of his and basically everyone in their friend circle knew except for him. The whole time he could sense something was wrong, but she denied everything, as did all their friends. I still regret not saying anything. I justified it because it wasn't my friend's group and I didn't know him that well. They later broke up and she said he had become emotionally abusive towards the end of the relationship, which isn't cool, and I was supportive, but in the back of my head I couldn't help but think that her cheating and shady fucking behavior absolutely contributed to it, if not caused it. I can't imagine a worse feeling than the one her ex-boyfriend had. Knowing deep down that something was off and everyone denying it to his face. That would probably also drive me to act in ways I'm not proud of. depressive episodes. You're hopeless and feel worthless. Don't bother getting out of bed because no one wants to see you, let alone the fact it feels as if you're weighed down by an elephant. Everything feels like a chore, from watching TV to going to the bathroom. Your mind constantly targeting every little thing you do and making it seem as though you're at fault. It feels as though you're nothing but wasted space, time and energy for not only others but yourself. Don't even bother to snap out of it and try to think positively about anything. You don't deserve the good things that happen to you. Whoever cares for you, your mind will twist into how they're tired of trying to help you or how it'll be better off if you weren't in their lives. There's nothing you can do. Imagine sitting with those thoughts for hours, alone, in a dark room, unable to get out of bed. An episode of rejection-sensitive dysphoria. People who don't have it probably don't understand just how horrible it is. People who do have it know exactly what I'm talking about. For those that don't know what it is, recall the single most horrifically shameful moment you've ever experienced. Imagine the heavy, sickening heat that went through your face, chest and stomach. Maybe you even felt a cold numbness in your extremities. Some may have genuinely wished in that moment that they were simply erased from existence. The shame was so bad. Some of you have probably only ever felt this when making a truly grave mistake in your life, doing something that seriously hurt a lot of people or caused major problems for your family, friends. Now imagine feeling that soul-wrenching level of shame when someone even so much as speaks tearfully towards you over a mild annoyance. You left the milk out, it went sour, and your parent or spouse is annoyed at you for leaving it out. Bam! You're spending the next 30 minutes, minimum, in a state of pure, frothing self-hatred, feeling undeserving even of the air you breathe. The person who was annoyed with you probably shrugged it off within a couple of minutes. You'll remember it for the rest of your life, as one more tick mark on your ever-growing list of reasons that you suck and you don't deserve happiness. It's an incredibly shitty mental glitch to have. As I understand it, it's usually tied to ADHD. When I see other people who can just calmly deal with their mistakes and not overthink them too much, I wonder what it must be like. It must be nice. I'm slowly learning to recognize it when it happens and I'm developing ways to cope with it, but I didn't even know that there was a name for it until I was about 32. My family has always commented on how I'm super emotional and sensitive about every little thing, but it's not like I enjoy being this way. No matter how hard I've tried, I can't help but have awful reactions to criticism, and it sucks. Chances are, I'll never be able to fully fix it. For now, I just settle for choking it when it comes on. I've found that the less I talk, the faster it goes away. If I don't vent to someone about how much I think I suck, the thoughts have nowhere to go, so they eventually dissipate. But damn, that 30 minutes always feels like the worst, lowest emotion in the world, every single time. Head on while riding a motorcycle on the way to work. Drunk made the wrong turn onto an exit ramp. I took the roof of his car almost completely off. 3 months in hospital, multiple surgeries, 3 more months of physical therapy to walk again under my own steam. Use a cane, can almost forecast the weather by what hurts. Both legs, hips, back, left shoulder. Hurt all the time. Sleeping is my only release from the pain. Just glad to still be here. Love my wife and 2 sons. Then, Phil, stroke, passed suddenly, then in rapid fire order, Mill, stroke, my dad, heart failure, my younger brother, was in a coma for 30-some years, respiratory failure, eldest Sil, cancer, and then my mom, massive abdominal infection, 36 hours start to death. Just kind of numb to folks dying around me right now. Been through the stages of grief, but just don't have any more fucks to give. Having so really high level of self-hatred, it's like being joined forever to the person you hate most in the world. It's like wanting to run away from your own shadow. I say all the time how much I wish to be someone else, and it's not because someone has it better, it's because then I would finally have the chance to get away and detach myself from the person I loathe the most in this world, me. It is constant torment. I'd rather be in an endless loop of having my teeth ripped out than spend another year in the company of myself.